So for the science portion of our stream, I'm going to follow up on the thing I said I would do like 2 weeks ago, where we research spike science and see like why you could survive falling into spikes. And I will show a clip and then we'll go from there. It'll be a repeat of the stuff I showed earlier, but there's a few more scenarios that I think are interesting to look at. So let's get Spelunky running. And there we go. All right, we got it. And let's get my notes up real quick here. All right, so let's just duck into a random level. I'm gonna go to Olmec. I'm gonna go through the shortcut just so it spawns me at the bottom. Actually, no, I can just go to jungle, I guess. Yeah, let's just warp to jungle. That's where we'll start it. 2-2 usually has a spike pit in the right spot to show this. Let's teleport around a bit. There are no spikes in this jungle level. Lord, I wish I could be this lucky. There we go. Okay, so I got an interesting clip to show everyone here. So avert your attention to the thing that's going to fill your entire screen for a moment. See if this is still here. Nice, it still is. Browser reveal. You can look at my shortcuts, see what I'm into. Anyways, so here's a fun clip of something Wumper was doing. You might have seen this before. This is kind of old. He just straight up falls into spikes and doesn't die.
Help.
So if you watch what happened here again, watch it in slow motion here. He does this, he whips the bee, and he just lands in it. The blood is from the monkey. Like, he did not land in the spikes. He took fall damage.
What?
A good compression on that audio there. So that's what we're going to look into today. So this might be interesting. Is this applicable to your run? Only if you're able to do a frame-perfect trick from a particular setup, but it is still interesting, and if you've ever seen this happen before, this will tell you why. This is also something you see happen a lot in, like, Arena, because there's all those spike pits at the bottom, and it's very common to have people just fall into the spikes and somehow live it. So I'm going to show you exactly why that happens for the first part of our science here. So hopefully that'll be interesting to someone. So let me have this display here.
Help.
Wumper, quiet. We showed you a clip. We already seen it. Alright, so I whipped up some fun tools to demonstrate this. So if we go over here and look at this autoplay thing, this allows me to automate like testing certain scenarios like the stupid jump. I've got a few things in here. Spike drop is the one that we're interested in. This isn't on Spelunky.fyi. Maybe it will be at some point. But let's reproduce Wumper's setup here. So he fell exactly 13 blocks into the spikes. And there's more to it than that. So if we go up here, that's the 10th one. That's the 13th one. So if I walk off the edge of this into the spikes, and I'm going to use frame advance to just sort of show it. I did not use frame advance because the game ate my input. Give me a second here. There we go. Alright, so if we use frame advance to see what's going to happen here, we've got a prediction of death, and that's because there's something else that he did to it. It's not as simple as just walking off a 13-tile ledge and winding up in the spikes and just taking fall damage. Like, you will die. That right there is the frame that I predicted that I would die with the tool I wrote. And indeed, that noise you heard with me stopping right here means that I got killed by the spikes. But he did something very specific in that clip. He whipped on his way off the edge, and this is kind of what I was talking about when I was complaining about that CO death, where whipping can affect how you take fall damage. Depending on when you whip, you will either take fall damage earlier or later. And in this case, he used a whip that didn't change the fall damage so much as it changed his alignment within the spikes that allowed him to survive it. So if I center my character right here in the middle of this, and frame by frame whip at a very specific time, you're going to see me survive the spikes. So let me give myself a bunch of health so I can survive the fall damage, and then I'll turn off God mode. So there's a bunch of elixirs. There's easier ways to do this, but this is how I chose to do it. So we would still die to the spikes. 99 health doesn't matter. Health doesn't exist in this game, basically. So let me get the... Why is the hitbox for this block not showing up? No, whatever, I don't really need it. Alright, so if we run off the edge, do that, and then that Wumper whipped on this frame right here to hit the B. So if we do that, and then fall straight down, God mode off, we take fall damage and survive the spikes. And the magic of that is there is an extremely precise fall that you can get at high speeds that pretty much the first frame you're not deep enough into the spikes to die to them, and then on the second frame you hit the ground, and so the spikes don't register it as a kill. So that's what that looks like there. That's how you survive falling into spikes. And now a little more detail about how that works is I'll show what's going on over here on the right. So once again, let me center myself and show the case that doesn't work. So if we walk off the edge and don't whip at all, I have this tool doing a lot of this work for me, but it's predicting overlaps over here. So the thing to pay attention to is the fact that it is predicting death on this frame. The way spikes work is they are 0.6 units tall. And if you overlap the spikes by a certain amount and you have a certain velocity, they kill you. Like that's the mechanic that goes into the spikes. You need to be airborne, you need to be falling at a certain speed, and you need to have a certain amount of overlap with the spikes. The magic number for that overlap is, let's just dig this out real quick. Where did I put that? I thought I opened this up earlier. Hold on. Just to pretend I'm rustling papers. The magic number for that overlap is 0.2123642 units. That's down to floating point precision, like 32-bit floating point precision. I don't know why that's what it is, but the other thing to consider here is that gives us a tiny little window in which we can survive the spikes, because the spikes are 0.6 tall. The character's maximum falling speed is this number here, 0.4, which means every frame I fall 0.4 units, and the overlap required with the spikes to die is slightly more than 0.2. So that means that if we take that little decimal value between the 0.2, we have like a 0.2123, or we have a 0.0123642 like window in which we can survive falling into the spikes. And incidentally, that 13 tile fall with the whip lines you up for that exact death, or for that exact survival. So this is the death scenario. If we go back up and carefully analyze the number that we wind up with, you'll see the survival scenario. I'll leave God mode on this time because it doesn't really affect anything. You saw the version without it. But if I walk off the edge, then first airborne frame, second airborne frame, input whip, third airborne frame sees the whip, that is going to slightly affect my falling speed due to jank with how like the player state and the coyote frames work. That causes you to fall at a slightly different speed. Specifically, this is slowing me down ever so slightly during the first couple frames of the whip before I actually drop at normal acceleration, which is as you can see this velocity here, it's 0.01 every frame. There's some floating point crust at the end of it, but it's basically 0.01. And so with this lineup, you'll see that I'm in that magic little window there between 0.2 and 0.212. I'm at 0.21. And that tiny little window is what allows me to survive falling into these spikes. So if you've ever wondered how this happens, it has nothing to do with falling between the spikes. It has nothing to do with having like iframes or getting hit by enemies at certain times. You have to be falling at a specific speed with a very precise alignment. And the reason why you heard the stab sound there is because when you have God mode on, the fall damage doesn't apply. The game thinks you're airborne on the landing frame and it kills you with the spikes anyways. But you saw when I didn't have God mode turned on, I indeed hit the ground and took fall damage and did not die to the spikes or take any damage from the spikes whatsoever. I just took one fall damage. So that's the gist of how that works, and that's Wumper's specific clip, but there are a few interesting applications for this. So the first thing, for anyone who's just interested in the science behind it, you might be wondering, but Cosine, how did you find that magic number to like 7 digits of precision? And the answer is I used binary search. So yeah, it's basically a frame perfect 13 tile fall into spikes. If you whip too early, it doesn't work. If you whip a frame too late, it also doesn't work. Good fun. But anyways, if you want to see how I actually figured out what that magic number is, just for anyone who wants to see the tech behind this, I'm going to go back up here, and I'm going to use a binary search mechanic that I put in this. If you don't know what binary search is, the best way to explain this is think about looking for a word in a dictionary. You know the dictionary goes from A through Z. You open it to the middle, and you check what letter you got. And if you got like the letter N or something, and the word you're looking for is chungus, then you need to go back a little bit. So you check the first half of the dictionary, and you got the letter G. So that's still not good enough. So you check it again, and you got the letter D. So still not good enough. You check the first half. Now you got the letter B. So now you need to check between B and D instead. So you do that, and you wind up at like letter CI or something. So now you know that you're very close to it, but you need to check the segment before CI to get to CH, and so on. And basically, you can have a 1,000-page dictionary and use this algorithm, and you have to do 10 checks to find the page that has the word that you're looking for on it. And that's the gist of what I'm doing here. I have a number that I'm getting down to like 6 or 7 digits of precision, which a lot of people will tell you is absurd to like go down to that kind of floating point precision, but it's actually extremely easy to do it because I can use binary search to do it, and in like maybe 10 to 20 iterations, I can find a number with extreme precision by just closing in on the threshold between when I survive the spikes and when I don't survive the spikes. And that's exactly what we're going to do here. So what I will do is I will set this to my starting position. I'll round off the numbers a little bit so they're cleaner. Just 119, warp to start position. All right, this is where we're going to take our first sample. So I need to get my character into the falling state before I warp. There we go. Okay, so let's see what we're predicting here. We're falling too fast, or rather, we're going to hit the spikes and die because there's too much overlap. So I need to go up 0.08 and try the sample again. Because that should, yeah, that'll reduce my overlap a little bit. Or actually 0.07 will get me the sample I want. So let's try that, warp back to starting position. Now we have a prediction of survival because we know the number we're looking for is kind of between 0.2 and point something. So now let's get another value that we know is going to result in death, which would be a little bit lower. So the max value that we're going to test is this Y value. And the minimum value we're going to test is one that we know will result in death. So let's just try this one. There we go. And then if I go check that one real quick here before I run the binary search, just warp back to start position, fall a bit, we're going to die. And we know our number is somewhere in between these two. This is the word in the dictionary we're looking for, is the magic point at which we switch from death to survival. So now I could go ahead and run the binary search. So enable it. So let me pull this up a little so you can see it. And start the autoplay. Now I'm going to show the first view with frame advance turned on, and then from there I'll let it run on its own. So it's just going to brute force each scenario. If I die, it's going to try to move me closer to the survival side. If I survive, it's going to move me closer to the death threshold. And it's going to slowly close in on the exact floating point value that results in the threshold between death and survival. So if I let this run for a bit, just automatically, I'm not pressing any buttons at this point. And if you can read the feedback on the left, it's a little bit hard to see it, but what you'll notice is that it was testing different start Y values. I'll show this again for anyone who missed the details of it. But it finished. Failure when it's this value, and then failure when it's this value. And what you're looking at here is the limits of 32-bit floating point precision. It's about 8 decimal digits. These two numbers are right next to each other in 32-bit floats. That's just how computers work. That's the limit for that data type. So these two numbers are adjacent to each other. Basically, the unit of least precision is the difference between these two numbers. And that unit of least precision will vary depending on how big the numbers are, like how many digits are in it. Spider, stop making noise. And what I need to do now is, I guess I'll show it again, and then I'll explain how I got my magic value from that dog. Be quiet. Stop making noise. Just go into the wall somewhere. Alright, fine, whatever. Go into the thorns. It was the only way, chat. I need to get rid of the dog somehow. Alright, so anyways, what I could do now is show that again real quick, and then I'll explain what to do with these results after I'm finished with it. So again, pay attention to start Y here if you want to see it like brute forcing these searches. But it's an efficient brute force because it's a binary search. So let's go ahead and start autoplay again. And you can see it like closing in on the number. Unfortunately, you can only see 3 digits of it, but you see it going back and forth a little bit. Now it's messing with the digits that aren't displayed here. Why is the ghost here? I thought I turned that shit off. Get rid of that. But anyways, you could see that it was slowly closing in on that value. The test values are being displayed here if you want to see the exact ones. And that'll eventually get us down to the value that we wanted. And that is what I then hard-coded into this application to predict survival. Like, I know I'm using information that I got by doing binary search already, but I basically brute forced it down to a reasonable window, something about this big, and then I used binary search to figure out the rest of it. So then what do we want to do with those numbers? We just take one of these results. I just have the last couple displayed here. We slap it into the start value. We turn off binary search. It does not actually round it off. The whole number is here. It's just not showing it because the floating point widget in Spelunky just automatically only shows these digits. I might change that at some point for my use case. But if I go ahead and pause it now, and then just warp the start position without doing any automated search stuff, and then go all the way up to this point right here, right before we die, the next frame, we're predicting this much overlap because I'm going to move 0.4 units down. So the tool is just saying, okay, I'm going to move 0.4 units, we're going to have this much overlap, and the tool thinks that's death. And indeed, if I fall, I die. That would have killed me right there. But then I could test the other value, which is the one that was ever so slightly higher, will result in ever so slightly less overlap, and that'll be just within the threshold that allows me to survive falling into the spikes. So if we slap that value in, warp to start position, fall into the spikes again, you'll notice it jittering around a little bit, and that's due to the way floating point precision works. Actually, did I paste in the right number? No, I did paste in the right number. Okay, you can see I survived it there. It's because we are extremely close to that threshold, and floating point errors are actually causing it to alternate between death and survival, more or less just randomly based on like which frame you're on. And that just has to do with the limits, again, of float 32 precision, but when we get to this point, it just happens to be the correct overlap to survive. And this was the number that I read off earlier, was that right there. You need that much overlap, maximum. Any more overlap than that and you die. That's the gist of how this works. I don't know why that's the number. It's probably derived from something in the physics engine that I don't fully understand yet. I messed with a few things trying to test it, like changing the height of the spikes, which does affect this number sometimes. But for now, it remains a mystery, and it's a hard-coded magic number in this little tool. And then in case it wasn't like particularly obvious to anyone, the reason why I'm like not even considering stuff less than 0.2 is because on the next frame, I'm going to be too deep into the spikes. So for instance, if we take like this number here, and let's see, what do I want to do here? I want to reduce my overlap, so let's move up to like 0.8 or something, or 0.9 I think will be good. So if we move up to this value here, and look at the overlap, it's 0.19, which is survivable, but then the next frame is 0.59, because we are not going to fall far enough to reach the bottom of the spikes. So that's why the threshold is between 0.2 and 0.212, whatever it is I read off earlier. Because if you go any higher up than 0.2, then the frame after this overlap kills you, because you're super deep into the spikes and you did not touch the ground. So that's the magic of the spike drop and why that happens. That's the technical details of how I found that number. And if you're wondering what the probability of this happening is in a random run, it's about 3%. You need to be falling at maximum speed and with a completely random falling height at maximum velocity, so 0.4 units per frame, you have a roughly 3% chance of just surviving falling into the spikes. So if you're falling too fast, you will bounce too high and then you will fall into the spikes after the bounce. So I think you basically need to be between like 8 and 16 tiles or so and be falling fast enough. If you're falling any further than that, you'll take the 2 fall damage, which bounces you higher, and that'll kill you when you just land in the spikes after the bounce. Now that said, there are a few interesting things you can do with this that are not practical in a real run, but that's not what we're interested in right now. Including the fact that there is a lineup that allows you to fall into spikes without dying and without taking fall damage. And it's insanely precise, so let me dig out the number that I got. I'm not sure if there's any setup that allows you to do this other than pure luck. I've never seen a clip of it happen, but it is possible to actually not take fall damage. But generally speaking, you will switch to the fall damage frame just before you hit the spikes. So let me get the numbers that I have here. I have a very specific value that I can move the player to that should give me the correct overlap. So let's see here. 101, what is the height that I'm looking at here? 118, okay, I need to add 7 to that, so let me just do this. Again, I have these written down somewhere. Actually, I need to add 8 to that. There we go, that number right there. So if I fall from that height, let's see if I got this right on the first try. This is relative to the height of the spikes, of course, but in this particular scenario, I think this is it. So let me see if this will do it. If it doesn't do it, I'll tweak it a little bit. It shouldn't be too hard to get to that. So First of all, what did we predict? Yep, we are in the survival threshold. And you'll notice I didn't get stabbed even though I have God mode on. And that is because this is, I think, the one value that allows you to actually not take fall damage from this. So I'm going to turn off God mode now. You can see up there, by the way, I'm going to toggle it a bunch. This is where you can check to see whether or not I have God mode turned on or off. I'm using a keybind to change it, but we have it turned off now. And if I take this fall, I live and I don't take any fall damage. So there is a tiny little window in which that could happen. I, again, have never seen a clip of anybody doing this, but it is theoretically possible. And you could theoretically line this up with like a rope or something if you got really lucky and just happen to guess like how to do it. But I do not know any setups for this. And if you want to see like the super like zoomed in close up of what that looks like, this is what the tool is predicting here. It's actually predicting death there, which again, this is because we're on the bare threshold of like something horrible happening here. But when we get to the actual frame that matters, it rounds it off just a little bit differently and concludes that this is survival. This will be used in the TAS. Honestly, if I like was going to make a TAS and I had an opportunity to use this trick, I absolutely would use this in the TAS, like just for fun. Because like this is very much possible to do in the base game. It's just extremely unlikely. But the thing that you could see happening here is my velocity is not 0.4. It is 0.38 and then some crap that rounds up. It's 0.38 as far as the physics engine is concerned, with a little bit of cruft that will ultimately not affect the outcome. So this is the value that does it. Normally what would happen here is you would get to this at either 0.39, in which case on the next frame you'll fall 0.4. Just do the way the physics engine works. It adds acceleration to velocity and then it applies velocity to position within the frame. So on the next frame, if I had 0.39 here, I would have 0.4, and then I would get moved down 0.4. So entering these spikes at velocity 0.39 and 0.4 is basically the same thing. But entering it at 0.38 means on the next frame I'm falling at 0.39, and it just so happens that that is not long enough to take fall damage. Just barely. So if I go look at the player one, just detach this, we might need this later. The falling timer here is going to start dealing fall damage when it reaches 38, but on the next frame I'm going to touch the ground before it reaches 38, so it gets set to 0. If I had fallen for literally one additional frame, I would have taken fall damage. So that's the gist of how that jank works. And then there's one other interesting thing that you could do with this that's a little bit harder to set up, but let me see if I can do it. I did not mean to, I thought I had God mode turned on there. Let me go just find more spikes real quick. Preferably at the same level. As you can see, I did not have God mode on. Okay, this will work. We can test it with this. So there is one more interesting thing you can do. Actually, we have a vine in the perfect position for this, but I think it'll be easier with a rope. So let me just use a rope for this. I turned God mode back on. Let me get rid of the bottom of this rope. I apparently can't delete the rope. I guess that's not a safe operation, so let's just do it from over here real quick. Now, some people probably know about this already. Grabbing a rope resets your falling timer, but it doesn't reset your velocity until the second frame. So you might have had a situation that I can actually show off right now, where you're falling, you're at the tip of the rope, let's see if I can get it, and then you press up on this frame. Let's see if this will grab it. No, I grabbed it too late, so let me try this setup again. So I'm going to do a max height jump, and then I'm going to fall. And let's see what the lineup looks like. Alright, so if I try to grab the rope here, you heard the noise maybe. I tried not to talk over it, but you heard me try to grab the rope. But if I don't press up for an additional frame, I'm going to slide off it while still in the climbing state, because it's on the next frame that the game is actually going to lock me onto the rope. You could slide a little bit when you grab ropes. And then I'm going to fall into the spikes anyways. I need to get my character entity back, but I want to show something here. So if we go back to player one's, not state, position, my falling timer reset, it's back down to 0. So that means that in theory, I can keep this very high velocity that I have right here. It actually got reduced by, I think, 0.015 when I grabbed the rope for whatever reason. That's just the drag of the rope on that one frame. But you'll notice here, I could theoretically hit these spikes at a sufficient speed to survive it with the falling timer low enough that I don't take fall damage. Now this was going to kill me because I'm not aligned. But I think I have the numbers for this. There is, of course, an alignment that does not kill you. So let me go ahead and do this. So let's see, I'm going to adjust the player up to this. Set my start position like right here. And there are probably other lineups for this, but this is just the one that I found when I was digging for it. So if we go in here, slap this value in, I need the top of the spikes, which are at 92.1. 101.01. Okay, so that's the number that we want. That right there. The extra cruft on the end, again, doesn't like matter for what I'm doing, or it shouldn't matter. If it does matter, I know how to tweak it a little bit to get it to work. Rounding errors do matter when you get to this kind of precision, but it shouldn't affect this particular one. So if we warp to the start position, I need to do frame advance, and then grab the rope on a very specific frame for one up frame. I think it's this one right here. I just grab the rope for one frame, and then I let go of it. And again, I survived that. You heard the squishing sound, but that's because I have God mode on. So if we reproduce that exact situation without God mode, it's turned off now. Warp to start position. And then I grab the rope on that one frame at the very bottom, which is, I think, this frame. You'll see I was climbing. On this frame, it updates my animation. I died because I'm an idiot. Let me check the numbers on that. I figured this might happen. I should have given myself an onk. Just respawn myself real quick, got him back on. I'm going to move myself up a little bit, because that was probably floating point precision that got me killed there. Pay no attention to the blood fountain. It died, PogChamp. That's not what was supposed to happen, honest. That was a blooper. Put that in the blooper reel. Barry, edit that out. Alright, so let's get our rope in position again. There we go. Alright, we'll test this with an onk this time around. I must have been like just barely within the threshold of die. So what we're going to do in that situation is move myself down just ever so slightly. So it actually turns out that did matter, I think. Let's try this one. I think that will work. Alright, so let's try that one instead. Frame advance, get myself standing on the ground. I need to change my horizontal position to 28. Warp to start position, and let's see what happens. So we do this. I didn't grab the rope in time. Let's try that again. I missed the frame to grab the rope. It's this frame right here. Grab the rope for one frame. Let's see what the prediction thinks is going to happen now that I slid off it. Predicted result, survival. And indeed, we survived. So let me do that one more time with God mode on to make sure it actually works, and then we'll do it with God mode off to prove that it will actually work in a real run. Again, I'm grabbing the rope for one frame when I'm right there. So God mode is off now. Let's try that again. Grab it for one frame. And we live. We take no fall damage. And that's because grabbing the rope for that one frame reset our falling timer. I can also show that real quick. So I'm going to grab that. So pay attention to the falling timer, just if anyone still doubts me for any reason. So it falls down, it's accelerating. We're going to take fall damage in 2 frames here, so we're definitely more than high enough to take fall damage. In fact, if I don't grab the rope, right there, fall damage got turned on. So frame 38 would have been the one where we take fall damage. So I'll turn on God mode so I could survive landing. Turn it off again, go back to the starting position. Grab the rope. And next frame, we reset our falling timer as I slide off of the rope, so we just don't take any fall damage. It has nothing to do with the speed at which you're moving. There's just a bunch of jank involved in this. So there you go. That is how you survive spikes. Just do frame-perfect inputs. It's that simple. I don't know why people have so much trouble with this. Realistically, though, it's about a 3% chance. The thing is, usually you're not falling at the correct speed to land in the spikes. And then it's a 3% on top of that. And then I think most people in general don't die to long falls into spikes, like in the first place. Typically, if you're going to fall into spikes, you're going to fall from like 2 or 3 tiles. Like that's almost always the case that happens to people. So this is why you see it a lot less than you would expect. because if you get hit by that awful like room in the dwelling where the mole knocks you into the 2-tile spike pit, you're not falling fast enough to survive it. You have to be falling at almost or exactly 0.4 units per frame, and that requires you to be at nearly fall damage speed for it to happen. Let me give myself another knock here. But as I showed, there are a couple scenarios where you can survive it. So if anybody wants to make a super like hellish like Kaizo level with frame perfect inputs, just use that 13 tile drop where you have to whip on a specific frame. Now before I move on to the next bit of this, there's more spike fall tech. I'm going to explain why the whip matters, because I glossed over that, and it's because I wanted to come back to that detail. So let's set up our 13 tile fall again. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 11. Let's get a floor. Does not matter what the floor is, unless it's a thorn tile. Thorns actually have a different hitbox from most of the other solids, but all the border tiles and stuff and floor generics are all the same as far as the hitbox. They're exactly 1 unit. Hey, Ted Cuddy. Alright, so once again, let me show this off for a second without doing that. We're going to leave God mode on for this because I already demonstrated that this can definitely work. So here's what it looked like when I didn't whip and fell off the edge. So I walked off. Are the runs going? I had a bunch of shitty CO runs, and now we're doing science. So, I mean, we're at the fun part of the stream now. An attempt was made for CO. So anyways, this is what it looked like when I just ran off the edge. And the thing to pay attention to here is actually the character's velocity as I'm falling. Do I have a good way to display the coyote frames? I can actually whip up this bad boy here and show the coyote frames if it doesn't crash my game. Here's another tool I whipped up. So coyote timer here. You may have heard people talk about this yet. Am I back at 69? Apparently I am. I think Medial looked into it and thinks I'm back at 69 because I did get a PB in a different category, but not CO. I don't remember who looked into that. Anyways, coyote timer. You'll hear people talk about this. First of all, if you don't know what this is, then I'm sorry that you're too young. But basically, Wile E. Coyote is this old-ass like Looney Tunes scenario. And the concept of the coyote timer is the cartoon character runs off the edge, and they only notice that they're going to fall when they actually look down. Like, it's that joke. Like, that slapstick is still in modern cartoons, but it comes from Wile E. Coyote. Love that. Just love those. I had those on VHS. God, I'm old. Anyways, in this video game, and in most video games, the term like coyote frames refers to the ability to walk into the air and then input a jump while you're airborne and have the game still allow you to perform that jump. And it's just like a quality of life thing for platformers like this, so it doesn't feel like you should have jumped and you didn't because you were 1 frame too late. You have a little bit of leeway. So this is, for instance, what allows you to do the stupid jump. So if you watch the coyote timer here, 3, 2, 1, and then it'll go to 0 and it'll stay at that. Once it's at 0, I cannot use the coyote frames to jump anymore. And when I land on the ground, it gets reset back to 4. I think if you're ledge hanging, it gets set to 6. Let me see if I can see that. So if I jump off a ledge... hold on, I need to do the inputs. Or is that climbing gloves that does? No, it's not. It's if you drop off a ledge, I think, with climbing gloves specifically. So if I add those in real quick, you also get coyote frames. This is why Keelan skip with Blad's Cape isn't as hard as you would theoretically think it is. So if I let these land on my head real quick here, and then I just do a grab, I guess I could have just done it with this tree. Trees are functionally like having climbing gloves. There you go, you can see it. We have 6 coyote frames. So it's 4 if you walk off a ledge, it's 6 if you're hanging, which means I could detach from this wall, and then I could jump like that, which looks really janky when you do it in slow motion like this, but it feels very smooth, and it's great that this game has that feature in it, because otherwise it would feel so miserable to do stuff like jumping off of trees or things you're grabbing with climbing gloves. So I'm very glad they did that, and they gave, again, 6 frames for climbing on walls, which is 1/10 of a second, or over here it's a little bit less. It's what 2/3 of that is. So sorry, I have a sticky input. There we go. So now to show the other thing that I wanted to demonstrate here is if I center myself on this tile and then walk off the edge, the way that the coyote timer is going to work is I just walked off the edge. On this frame, the game is going to notice that I'm airborne, and then it's going to start decrementing the coyote timer. It's a bit weird the way the state machine works. It feels like it notices late. You kind of have like 5 coyote frames, but the way the inputs work is the game notices your inputs 1 frame after you submit them with the Spelunky frame advance. So what's going to happen here is this is the last time that I can input a jump. If I input a jump right now, the game is going to see it on the next frame. It's going to see the coyote timer is greater than 0, and it's going to allow me to jump in midair. So if I input jump, which I'm doing right now, I get the jump. But if I wait till coyote frame 1 and then try to do the same thing, so if we walk off the edge here, if I input the jump now, the game is going to see that jump on the next frame when the coyote timer is 0. So I'm inputting jump and nothing happens. That's just a little bit of the jank with how the frame advance works. It's something you don't notice much when you're actually playing the game, but when you're doing frame advance, it does matter. So coyote timer 2 is essentially when I need to input my jump in order for it to register on frame 1. And I can of course do it on any earlier frame as well. So I could do it on like 3 if I wanted to. It would just jump sooner. Play Mega Man, you'll understand why they're important. Yeah, Mega Man's got some crusty like jump physics, doesn't it? Or at least the like NES ones. I don't know like when games started doing the coyote frames thing. Maybe some did early on. A lot don't have it, but just know that Spelunky does have them. It's the reason why the stupid jump is possible, and it's a huge quality of life thing. But the thing I'm getting at here is pay attention to the falling timer now, which I could put over here as well so you can see them both right next to each other. So pay attention to falling timer and coyote timer. There's a little bit of jank with how the game handles this, but basically the game sees I'm falling on this frame, but it's like, oh wait, you have coyote frames. It sets the falling timer back to 0, decrements the coyote timer, and then it starts incrementing the falling timer again. So you get this weird reset. And that actually is affected by your whipping state for some reason. So if you watch what was happening here, you walk off the edge, and pay attention now to the velocity Y, which is lowercase for some reason. Spelunky devs, please fix. So I walk off the edge. I gain this for the 1 frame of falling. I gain a tiny little bit of negative velocity, but then I stop accelerating downward. You'll notice it's still 0.01, it's still 0.01, it's still 0.01. Now it starts to go down, and that is what is affected by whipping. Because for whatever reason, whipping like locks it in at a different time. So what I'm going to do is show the Wumper scenario where he whipped at that specific frame and allowed himself to survive that spike fall. And the frame that he whipped on was he walked off the edge like this, and then he did his input on the next frame after this. So if we input our whip like this, you'll notice that what happened there was it actually went down to 0.02, like for an additional frame. For some reason, that just happens. Like when you start whipping, you still have the coyote timer, you could still jump, but your velocity is not locked in. Your falling timer starts to increment immediately, even though I still have coyote frames. Whereas you saw earlier, my falling timer didn't start increasing until the coyote frames were over. So what he did by doing that was he essentially canceled out the no gravity effect that you get while you have coyote frames, because he was in the whipping state instead of just running off the edge normally. I do not know why the whip does that. It is state machine jank as far as how this game is concerned. Like it has something to do with like the character's attacking state versus like the falling state. But that gives you a different lineup. And as you can see here, that's the survival case. We'll hear the squelching noise, but again, that's because I have God mode turned on. We survived falling into those spikes. So this is why you'll sometimes feel like you just take fall damage at different times, because this actually affects a few scenarios, which I'm going to show in a moment, that aren't related to spikes. So let's go back up here and show a couple other cases that can happen here. Including, I believe, there's a way to, I forget when you have to whip, we'll try it out, but there is a way to walk off an 8-tile ledge and whip on the correct frame and not take the fall damage. And there's also a way to whip at the wrong time and take fall damage off, I think, a 7-tile ledge, but I don't remember the details of that. We'll mess around with that for a little bit, because I think it's interesting to show it. But anyways, what I wanted to show now was how this behaves differently depending on when you whip. So if I whip now, I'm in the attacking state. And right now we're walking over the air, so let's see what happens. I start falling immediately. My coyote timer is going down, but my falling timer is still increasing, and we never stopped accelerating. So essentially, this has like started my falling timer early. Even though I had coyote frames, being in the attacking state started the falling timer early. And I think this actually might be a good time to demonstrate it in a more relevant scenario. So let me go to Olmec, where we can just have a controlled environment to test in. Let's show what that looks like for 8 tile drops. So go get the border tiles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then for the sake of making this easier, let's lock the camera so we can just see it from this angle. And we can get this crap off the screen. We don't need this here. Fade these. There we go. Alright, so I need to get my character again. So pick player. Again, this thing on the right here, this entity tester, is a tool I wrote, but the one here, the more limited version, is built into Overlunky. So I'm kind of using the two of them together to show more information. True Rain, thank you for the follow. I hope you're finding this interesting. I mean, I love this kind of stuff. Maybe I'm not that good at this game, but I could figure out how it works at the very least. So here's the info that's pertinent to what we're doing here. And Fast, thank you for the follow. Alright, so we got all the same things up. We got the falling timer, we got the coyote timer. It's a little bit of a mess over here, but you should be able to read the important things, which is this stuff right over here. And then pay attention to the player's state as well. So this is an 8 tile drop. And if you know anything about how this game works, you take fall damage if you do this. So if I turn off God mode, you take fall damage. This happens all the goddamn time. Like dwelling, it's horrible, everybody loves it. Let me give myself a bunch of health in case I tank more. I've God mode on right now, but I'll show fall damage when it's pertinent. And if you do this, you don't take fall damage. And the reason for that is that the way the falling works, you are just barely below the threshold for taking the fall damage when you do that. So if I drop off this ledge, for instance, I would hit the ground on frame 38, which, as I've said before, is the frame where you take fall damage, but it processes that I hit the ground first, and I touch down, and I don't take any damage. I have God mode on, but you're gonna have to take my word for it. I've checked these numbers before. But if you walk off the top of it instead, just on your own like this, right there, we got to frame 38, and then on 39, we're still going to take the 1 fall damage. So it's a 2 frame difference. Despite the seemingly high amount of difference, it has something to do with how the player accelerates, I think, when they fall. Because you don't get coyote frames from dropping off of the ledge like that, but you do get them here, so you get to move down a little bit as you step off the edge before you start accumulating a fall. But if you drop off this ledge, you immediately start accumulating it because you don't have any coyote frames, and that right there, if I didn't have God mode, would have dealt fall damage to me. So to show the ledge hang scenario again, drop off the edge. My coyote timer is -1, which is basically the game saying you don't get any coyote frames when you leave whatever climbing state you're in. So falling timer immediately starts incrementing. So there's a bit of jank behind it, but the important thing to note is that's why that deals fall damage when you walk off the top, but not when you ledge hang. And it's extremely close to dealing fall damage when you ledge hang due to the way the coyote frames don't exist. So you can see there again, it was at 6, but since I dropped off the ledge, like a regular ledge hang, it immediately set it to -1. I think you have to be on the side of the wall, and you have to pull away from the wall without releasing your ledge hang to keep those 6 coyote frames, is how that works. So if we fall down again, I wouldn't take fall damage. If I fall for 1 additional frame by deleting that floor, that's the fall damage. So literally you are 1 frame away from taking fall damage when you do this kind of drop. I don't know if that was intended, that it's that insanely precise, but that's the number that they worked out. So 8 tiles is the threshold, but there is some jank you can use to let yourself not take fall damage from this. And I don't remember the numbers, so we're going to try to work them out together. So with the information that we have, when can we whip during the coyote frames to get the result that we want? And what we want to do here is note that the coyote timer pretty much resets your fall damage when it ends, is what we're going for here. And we know that something weird happens when you whip, and if I recall correctly, I think the thing you want to do is have your whip end on coyote timer either 2 or 1. And then it will decrement because you'll enter the falling state. So if you look at what happens here with the character state, we're in the standing state. There we go, the game just noticed we're in the falling state. Being in the falling state with a coyote timer is the thing that causes this falling jank here and locks your velocity to whatever it happened to be at the time that the game noticed you were falling. And then we stay in the falling state, but we have no more coyote frames, so we start falling quickly. But we can abuse the fact that the coyote timer doesn't update correctly if we whip at the right frame. So let me normalize myself to the center of this. I don't know the timing for this, so we're going to do a little bit of trial and error. But what we want to do is we want to step off this edge and delay the... I think we want to delay the reset of the falling timer. Let me think about what we want to do. Let's just whip and start running on the same frame. So let's start with that. So I walked off the edge, and just now the game noticed I'm not standing on anything. So it started our falling timer, we got our coyote timer, we're in the attacking state instead of the falling state, so we accelerate quickly. And what we want to do is get as far down as possible before the falling timer resets at the edge of our coyote timer. The problem is that doesn't happen if I'm in the whipping state. I need to be in the falling state with a coyote timer greater than 0 in order for that reset to actually occur. So we would take fall damage from this, right there. That's no good. So how do we do this? We whip at a different time. We want our whip state to end while we still have coyote frames in order to walk off this ledge and take a different fall. So let's see if we can do it. So I'm going to whip for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 frames. I don't know the exact number, so we're going to figure it out. That's 10 frames. And now I'm going to run to the right. And let's just see if we got it. So we walk off the edge. We're still in the attacking. We just switched to the falling state. So that was... we whipped too early and took fall damage. So center myself again. Let's do it for 8 frames. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Walk off the edge. And let's see what we get here. Attacking, attacking, attacking. Falling state. Falling timer just reset right there. Let's see if that gave us enough to survive this fall without getting hit. And there you go. We stuck the landing. So it was 8 frames. So I think it's either a 1 or 2 frame window. So let me center myself, turn off God mode, turn on frame advance. So we're going to do our whip. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Then hold right and run off the edge. And that's how you walk off an 8-tile ledge without God mode turned on and don't take any fall damage. Now, I don't remember what the precision is of the whip. I think there's another frame. I think it might be a 2-frame window that you can do it in. So, I mean, if you're a cracked speedrunner and you really want to get those time saves, you can do this. I did not discover this. This is something that has been brought up a couple times on the Science Discord. But here, I'm showing it to a broader audience here. The fact that it is technically possible to do this if you whip on, like, the correct frame. So I'm going to turn God mode back on, and let's try 7 and 9. Whip frames before running off the edge. This is of course going to vary depending on when you actually walk off the edge. I'm centering my character in the exact center of this border tile here to make sure that I have a consistent setup, but obviously if you're running up to this edge, it's going to be different every time. So really you just have to eyeball it, get lucky, or you make a task or something, which is something I've considered doing for this game, but it's difficult to make a task for this game. Maybe that's something we'll see in the future, not in the near future, at least not from me, but maybe someday, because it is something I'm interested in doing. And the task would absolutely do stuff like this. So anyways, let's try 7 whip frames. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and let's start running. Alright, so we are falling there, attacking, attacking. We just switched to the falling state here with 1 coyote frame left. Let's see if we get the reset. We did not get the reset. 7 is not going to cut it. So 7 means you're running off too early to do it. We didn't get the reset because of the way the game does the updates on these values. We're going to fall too far and we're going to take the fall damage. So that's no good. Let's try 9 frames. We know 8 frames works from this particular lineup. Let's try 9. So, what? Hold on, I scuffed that. I held the button too long. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then start running off the edge. Let's see what that gets us. Ready timer's 1. We got the reset. And yep, you would not take fall damage from that. So there is a 2-frame window. 10 didn't work, 7 didn't work, 8 and 9 frames did work. Again, that'll depend on where you are on the edge. But the gist of it is you need to go from the attacking state, this state right here, 12, into the falling state at a very specific time. And if you still have coyote frames, when the game processes that you're in the falling state, it'll reset your falling timer, But since you were whipping, you were accelerating the whole time, and you get just enough distance downward before the reset of the falling timer that you can reach the ground before you've accrued enough frames to take fall damage, like I just did right there. I don't know if that was 8 or 9, but it's a 2-frame window, so that's how that works. There's some other weird jank like heavy state that I could show off real quick, so let me get this out of here. All this revolves around like whether or not you're in the attacking state. So heavy state is something that you've probably also heard people refer to, and that has to do with, I think, getting locked into the attacking state when you land on an enemy's head. So let me see if I can get a good enemy for this, like a giant fly. Just stick that there and get some border tiles. Heavy state has other applications, notably stuff like Hundun fight, where you want to stomp something faster. If I walk off this edge and start bouncing on this grotesque fly here, this is the speed that you normally get. Not terribly exciting, and definitely not what you want if you want to stomp something quickly, especially Hundun, which is a stompable enemy. But there is a way that you can get into something called the heavy state, and that has to do with some weird jank that happens when you're jumping. So first, to explain this, it's a little bit different from the coyote timer. This state has to do with how the game changes the height of your jumps. So let me put this guy over here for now. So the way that the jump heights work in this game is I'm holding the jump button right now. And if you watch what's happening in my velocity, it's going down at this speed. And then we accelerate down normally. That's if I hold jump the entire time. But the thing is, if I want to do a short hop like this, well, how does the game handle that? So I'm going to jump for 1 frame. It set my velocity. Look at how much faster that went down. It wasn't 0.01. That went down by like 0.025 or something. Yeah, it's like 0.025 or something. It's not exact. I don't know what the number is off the top of my head, but I am decelerating, or rather, I'm getting pulled down way faster. That's heavy state. Heavy state is when you do a short hop and release the button before you're at the peak of the jump, and what the game does is it shortens your jump from the initial boost of velocity until you start falling, and then you can see now it's going down 0.01 at a time. Again, I don't remember the number off the top of my head. We could math it out here, but I think it's actually a little bit inconsistent, like depending on which frame of the jump you're on. But if we do it again, this is a 1-frame jump. We went from 0.18 to 0.136 to 0.101. It's definitely decelerating quite fast. We're in heavy state right now until we reach the arc of our jump, and then it switches back to normal falling state. But the thing is, if you could maintain that falling speed, that would be really useful for like stomping Hundun, for instance, which is a strat that some runners use to do the Hundun fight, because you could stomp him really fast. So if I stomp on this fly, for instance, let me lock it into a box. There we go. Can it get out of that? I don't know if it can get out of that. This is what this looks like normally. But if we can somehow keep ourselves in that heavy falling state, then we don't have to worry about that. And I think, off the top of my head, the way you do that is you need to time a whip, and I don't think it's super precise. So let's whip, and then input a jump, and see what happens here. So I'm going to let go of my jump key. I might have whipped too early. Let me jump and then whip. Again, I'm discovering a bit of this on the spot because I'm not super familiar with it. Let's see what we get here. It did not look like what I was expecting. Let's try this timing. Let's jump and whip on the same frame. Alright, jump and whip on the same frame. Let's see what we get. Alright, so we are in heavy state. We're touching the enemy. Let's see if we keep it. There we go. Okay, so here we had heavy state. We have heavy state now. You notice how much faster I'm bouncing into this. This game's physics engine is weird. You might have accidentally... Get back in the box. You might have accidentally done that at some point during a run that you were doing. Let's see if we can get it again. Oh, there we go. Okay, it's not too precise. So again, this is the slow version. And you didn't get it. There we go, and that's heavy state. So you can see how this would be useful for the Hundun fight, because you're hitting the fly like twice as fast. Asshole, would you stop getting out of the fucking box? I can probably just pin it in here with Just do this real quick. Just want the fly to stop getting out of the box because it's making it hard to show this off. There we go. We can do it from here. There we go. So we're stuck in heavy state again. Now what I'm going to actually try to understand myself, because I'm not 100% certain what caused this to happen, is I'm going to try to figure out why I'm still in this state when it should have, in theory, cleared this state and reverted me back to the normal slow fall. So let's see what we're doing here. We're in the falling state. Falling timer's resetting. If I hold jump, I actually don't reset it by holding jump. I'm still in heavy state when I let go of jump. I wonder if there's a flag somewhere in the game that is like conserving this information and it doesn't realize that I'm not holding my jump key anymore because I was whipping. It could be that. There might be a variable that I don't have in here that is controlling this particular state. I'm not entirely sure. Spelunky doesn't have every single variable figured out. But let's try to, without being able to see the exact technical details of it, let's see if we can break down what you have to do to get into this state. So with frame advance, if I whip and jump, just a short hop, let's see what happens here. We did not get heavy state from that. I don't know if you have to touch the fly. Let's jump and then whip before we reach the peak of our jump and see if that gets us in heavy state. That might be what it is. Don't let Jank. No, I still did not get us into it. Try a couple more scenarios. Alright, so I'm holding jump. I'm going to whip while I'm still holding jump. I'm going to release jump. Doesn't matter if you release whip. It's only one frame of input. Let's see if that gets us in heavy state. No, we are still not in heavy state. What am I doing here? This is actually difficult to do now that it's in a little pit like this. Again, I'm trying to learn this for myself because this is something I've known about but haven't messed with very often. There we go. Okay, we got it. What did I do in that situation? I think I jumped and then I whipped to get into heavy state in that particular situation. I don't remember if it matters if you land on an enemy. So let's see. Let's try this again. I missed the hole. Yeah, I jumped and then I whipped. But I think I let go of my jump button. Alright, let's try that. So frame advance. Let's jump. Whip. Release jump. Let's see if that gets us in a heavy state or not. No, that still didn't do it. I'm not entirely sure what I'm actually doing to cause this to happen. I wish I understood this better. I really do. Oh. You know, I can... What am I doing? I can hold this guy still so I can make this pit bigger. Hold on a second. Bear with me for a moment. Let's... Close the player one for a second here. Pick nearest. Giant fly. Lock X and Y position. There we go. Okay, this guy's not going to move anymore, so we can actually do this a little more consistently. And get him centered. Okay, so that guy's not going to move around, so that'll make this a little easier to test. That's not heavy state. Not heavy state. Jump and then whip. If anybody knows how to do this consistently, by the way, I'd love to know. This is something I kind of decided to discover on stream. There we go, we got it again. I wonder if I need to be in the whip state when I touch this guy. I wonder if that's what's playing into it. No, I highly doubt I'm in the whip state when I'm actually touching this guy. No, I definitely finished whipping before I got into the heavy state, didn't I? Let's see, I'm watching the VOD to see what I did there. Yeah, we definitely finished whipping before we got into the heavy state there. Let's see here. Jump and whip on the same frame. I was supposed to jump on that frame. Jump, whip, input. Probably jumped too high there. No, I actually got it. Is it really that easy? Is it just do it on the same frame? Oh, it's okay, you just do it on the same frame. I wonder if that's what it was the whole time. So let's see. Yeah, let's try that again. So, whip, jump. Let go. Can I do it early? Yeah, we're still in heavy state, and we definitely didn't have our whip out when we got it, when we stomped this guy. Yeah, okay, it's actually that easy. I was making this way more complicated than it needed to be. So it's 2 inputs on the same frame, which is well within reason for a human being to do. It's not going to be super consistent. Now the question is there a different order in which I could do it? So we know that both on the same frame works. What if I jump 1 frame early? So I'm going to jump, and then I'm going to whip, and then I'm going to release both buttons. That did not put us in heavy state. I'm going to whip, and then I'm going to jump. I don't want to be in flailing state. I don't think that matters, but... So, whip. Jump. That did not put us in heavy state either. Okay, it might be frame perfect then. There we go. Okay, maybe there's more to it. Real speedrun strat for Osiris. The problem with doing this for Osiris is you can't get higher than him, so you have nothing to jump off of. It's jump and whip right after. There might be more to it than that. Let's see, let's try that then. So I'm gonna jump. There's 2 things I could try. I'm gonna jump for 2 frames. I'm gonna whip, but I'm still holding my jump button for 2 more frames. Bedgy. Alright, well, thank you for watching. I hope that was at least interesting for as long as you saw it, even though you don't play this game anymore. You don't have to play this game to enjoy some science. I watched those Super Mario 64, like, A-button challenge runs, and I'm, like, never going to do that shit in that game. I don't know if I'll ever play that game again. But anyways, we're not in heavy state, so that was jump and then whip. So the other thing I'm going to try here, let's see. I'm going to jump, I'm going to release jump, and then I'm going to whip. 1, 2, release for a couple frames, and then whip. Let's see if that's heavy state. That is not heavy state either. But if I do it at the same frame... I'm having a lot of trouble doing now. There we go. I don't know, you think it's jump and whip right after. I wonder if there's more that goes into it than that. Can I get it? I'm trying to whip like right after my jump is what I'm trying to do here.
Wow, much science.
Yeah, I don't know.
Very cool. Rad. 2, amazing.
It could be releasing both buttons on the same frame, I suppose.
Anyways, good night.
Okay, thank you for the 50 bits. And whatever that horrible noise was that it made in the middle. Let's try that. So let's jump first. Whip first. I don't think this is going to matter because holding your whip button usually doesn't do anything, but I'm going to release both buttons on the same frame just to see if that affects it at all. No, that didn't work. Yeah, I'm not sure, Medial. Maybe there's more to it that I'm not aware of, but in any case, this is the concept of heavy state. So if you were, for instance, going to go do like the Hunden fight or something, let me head over here. This is how this can potentially be useful. You don't have spike shoes. You need to deal some damage to Humble Bundle down here. I know we have God mode turned on, but let's see if we can do heavy state on one of the Hunden heads, just to show like how quickly you can grind them down by doing that. How bad is this? We can get it up here, I think. Let me clear some of this crap out. I'll have a couple attempts to do this on the way up. Let's get Hunden to go right, or get him to go left. There we go. That's heavy state. First try, too. Let's see if we can get it lined up again. Obviously, I wasn't, like, controlling where I was, and I got scraped off on some blocks. And there we go, we got it again. Like, obviously, the fireballs are going to be a problem here, but you can see how fast I'm able to hit Hunden. And you'll see runners occasionally do this if they don't have spike shoes, and they, like, got 2 of their 3 bombs off or something on the snakehead. It's practical to use heavy state to just whittle down the rest of Hunden's health really quickly. There we go, I'm actually getting it fairly consistently. Now obviously the problem is, it's a little hard to keep track of how many times you've hit the head, you might fall on the spikes. I think it's kind of a backup strat that most people wouldn't do unless they had to. But, like, there it is. And you don't need God mode to do that, it's just I would have died multiple times to various other things. But you could fight Hunden with heavy state, and literally I just stomped him to death before he got to the top of the level. like right at the top. So this is a strat that exists. If you're really desperate, you can go for it. I occasionally get heavy state, mostly by accident when I'm fighting certain enemies, but you can do it intentionally. It's just jump and whip on the same frame, and possibly there's more to it than that I'm not fully aware of. I need to do a little more homework on that, but hopefully that part of this was useful. Now, incidentally, you'll notice there's spikes on the ground here, and you might be thinking to yourself, Cosine, can you fall into the Hunden spikes and survive? And the answer is yes. Not only can you survive them, it's easier to do it, because the Hunden spikes move upwards while you're falling. And handy that, I also updated my tool to accommodate the Hunden spikes. So they're not moving right now, which isn't terribly interesting. But they have basically the same jank with the overlap that regular spikes do. And this is why you've probably also seen clips of people falling into the Hunden spikes and surviving, because it's more likely that you'll get bopped by something and fall a large distance. You can survive the Hunden spikes as well if you just get the right luck and the right lineup. So there's a lot going on over here on the left of the screen. Let me pull this up a little bit more. And let's get a good fall. We still need to be falling pretty fast. It's a little more lenient. I'm not going to go into like lineups for it because the spike floor is moving, so there's not a lot you could do. Pay attention to this over here on the right. I'm going to pick random positions until I get one that shows survival. And I think the odds of this survival is about 5 to 6%, I think. Because of the Hunden spikes moving up, in addition to you moving downward, they're more likely to move into you and save you from death due to the way the physics engine handles that. So I'm clicking around a few times, trying random heights until I get one that survives. I might not be falling fast enough, actually. Let me move up a bit. Too far from spikes. There we go. Okay, let's try this. I could probably have this predict forward a little bit more if I wanted to. Failure, failure. That weird noise you hear, by the way, is a fire frog, like, slowly dying, one frame at a time. There we go, success. Okay, we got one here. So, this is another success situation that you can have. I'm falling into the spikes. The spikes are moving up towards me. There shouldn't be a floor here. Let me get rid of that. And what it's showing here is this is where the spikes are going to be when I run into them. So, they're moving up to align themselves with these little lines that I drew. And that's the frame of overlap. And then on the next frame, if I had God mode turned off, we hit the ground, and we took lethal fall damage because I was falling too fast. But we did not get stabbed by the spikes, is the notable thing there. But I was falling from too high, so we took lethal fall damage instead, because that's just how this video game do. But the point is, you can survive the Hunden spikes, and if I line myself up a little bit better, I should be able to get one that I can just bounce. So let's head back down there and see if we can make that happen before the spikes get too high up. So let's do this. I'm going to lock my camera to this block here, I think. Or maybe this one. Yeah, let's lock our camera to this block here, see what we're working with here. So we know that we can fall about this far, and we should be moving fast enough. So let's see what we can get for our alignment. I also want to show the fact that it's a slightly more lenient fall than what you would normally get. And what I mean by lenient is since the spikes are moving up towards you, you can actually get away with a slightly different overlap. Like as long as your first frame of overlap doesn't exceed that 0.212 limit or whatever, you only have to fall 0.39 something tiles on the next frame because the spike floor is moving up slightly and you're moving down at 0.4. So pretty much there's a slightly like more generous window that you could survive in. So let me see if I can get that to happen. It basically means that I can survive an overlap of less than 0.2. So I'm trying to get one to show up here, which I can just brute force it for a second. Then I'll reset my fall timer so I don't take lethal fall damage. Because I'm hovering right now is what's happening. So the game is just accumulating fall damage even though I'm not moving. So let me see if I can get one around 0.19 or so. I'll type in a number if I can't get one by brute force. Oh, I clicked out of one. Well, that's still survival. That's not the survival we want. 1 pixel higher, maybe? There we go. Okay, so here we have one that would normally kill you. And Hunden is in the way, so I'm going to do something cursed and just move him over there. Pay no mind to his legs. If I turn off God mode and take this fall, again, I'm going to not that. We did detach this real quick. Falling timer, yeah, it's set to that. So P to falling time. Let's set it to something more realistic that we would have at this point, like about 10 or so. So we'll still be falling at the correct speed. I didn't affect my velocity at all. I just set my falling timer. Alright, so we're coming down. Again, it's predicting success. And we land. Now, if I do that again with God mode turned... Actually, no, never mind. I had God mode turned off. I actually didn't take the fall damage because my falling timer was sufficiently lenient. So let's see if I can get one more. Okay, that one's death. It's about 0.19 is the number that I'm looking for here. Let me get one with a more realistic falling timer so you can see me bounce on the spikes but not actually take the fall. So just for a realistic example of how this might happen in a normal run. Because me messing with the falling timer is the reason that happened. So we had a bunch of survival states there. There we go, there's another one. Alright, so falling timer is very high. Let's set it to like 20 or so. That should give me enough. Alright, so there we go. We're going to take fall damage now. But we should survive this fall. We bounce. Let's see if... Ooh, that might kill me. Yeah, the bounce is a little bit too high for that. I think I took 2 fall damage. I just barely was falling fast enough, and this is what I was talking about. With 2 fall damage, you bounce. And if you bounce too high, you die instead. So in that particular scenario, that was not going to be survivable. I survived the spikes, but I'm going to land in them and die now, because I'm moving downward fast enough to get killed by them. Hundun's doing some stank leg right now. So I'm going to turn God mode back on so that doesn't kill me. And let's try a couple more lineups here. What's the lowest height that's survivable? I showed that earlier. Did you come in during the part with the jungle? Or do you want to see that again? I can show that really quickly because I have the numbers for it still. I need to land on the ground. Okay, here we are. So let's try to get a setup that isn't going to result in just misery. You know, we can be a little bit more diligent about this. So set the current position. What is my current predicted fall at this point? It's death. I'm going to move up 0.04. So that'll be this much. Alright, let's see what we get out of that. Now work to... No, that's not quite doing it. I don't know what I scuffed here with the math. Let's go up a little higher. Let's try that. And this resets my fall timer. I have it programmed into this mod. So that's why I'm not getting a reset when I move my cursor around, but when I use this warp, it does reset the fall timer. Oh, what occurs to me actually is this is going to be wrong because the floor is moving constantly underneath me. Well, let's see if we can get it to work. There we go. No, that didn't work at all. Let's try that again. This is, oh my god, Hundun, are you okay? This is a little bit hard to line this up because of the moving floor. It's hard to predict what I need. Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to easily do this. I'm not discovering bow skip. I've tried that already. Let's just go back to the old strategy and try to get up 0.19. I can't use a starting position because it's not relative to the spike floor. It's relative to the world, and the spike floor is moving. So on every subsequent frame, my starting position is wrong again. So, just do that. Come on. Come on, give it to me. Death. We're not going to do this too much longer. Don't worry, chat. One more example of this, and then I'll show a couple other things. You didn't get back to me, but did you see the jungle segment, or do you want me to show that? Okay, that's still death, because, why is that death? We're not falling fast enough, that's why that's death. I need to be higher up. There we go. Okay, we got a survival scenario. Alright, so if we fall down there, set our falling timer just right there, that should work. Let me make sure I take the 1 damage just to see how this scenario usually plays out. There we go. Okay, so we're going to take the 1 fall damage. So we have 2 health. I had God mode on. God damn it. Okay, Chad, you believe me, right? You've been here since the heavy state. The point that I'm trying to make here is you fall into the Hundun spikes. If you're falling at maximum speed and Hundun doesn't have a stank leg, you can survive the fall. Like about 5 to 6% of the time. But I keep scuffing this because I don't have God mode turned on. So anyways, let me really quickly give Gugabo some context for this, because this is, I think, worth showing off a second time anyways. You sent me a clip. Okay, I'll look at that in a moment, but let me just go back to the jungle real quick. This is the same for every spike in the game, by the way. They're all the same height. Voice echoes, plenty of opportunities to find spikes. There they are. Alright, so anyways, you can actually fall into spikes without taking fall damage, so I will show that off first. The setup for it is a little bit gross. Set the current position. Now let me lock this in real quick. This is about 108. I didn't mean to press enter there. That opens a layer door by default. And the number that I had for that particular fall is top of the spikes plus these very specific values. So the top of the spikes are at 100.1 plus this garbage. So this is where we need to fall from in order to not take fall damage and survive the fall. This is, as far as I'm aware, the best you can get out of this. So if I warp to start position, you'll notice I landed on the ground and I didn't take any fall damage. And if we do it again with God mode turned off, as you can see here, no fall damage. So there is a setup that you can have, and if we do this with frame advance, you fall from about here, so it's basically an 8 tile drop, but not quite. You're a little bit lower than 8 tiles. Thank you for the hydrate, Tofu. So we're fine here. We did not overlap the spikes enough to die, and then we moved far enough on the next frame to hit the ground first, and we were not falling long enough to take fall damage. So that's the magic of that. So that answers your question. And technically, Gugu, you can survive any fall if you grab a rope at the right time. So I'll show that off one more time again, because I have all the numbers for it. So if we throw a rope here, and then position myself at, a height that I wrote down, you can grab the rope for one frame, and then just deposit yourself into the spikes, and just survive the fall completely. So let's whip this up again here. That's the magic number that we need. I might have to align this number a little bit because it was giving me trouble last time I tested with it. So let's try this instead. So that's the number that we're going to go for that. That should work. So if I warp to the start position, and close out of this. Oh wait, am I off by one? Horizontally, I need to be at 18. Alright, so warp to the start position, fall from here, grab the rope for one frame. We don't have God mode turned on, so I'm going to grab the rope on this frame, and then I'm going to release the up button. And you can see there I actually switched, and that there, if I had the correct one of these open, it basically reset my fall distance, and that'll allow you to just fall into the spikes from whatever distance you want. So you can see right there, falling timer just reset to 0 when I grab the rope. We don't have God mode on. We survive the fall into the spikes and take no damage at almost full falling speed. Grabbing the rope reduces your velocity by a tiny bit, and then you just accelerate down again. You get back to the right speed. So technically a rope setup like this, or there's probably a few others you could use, will allow you to do this from literally any height if you can do a one frame rope grab at the very bottom of the rope. Alright, so any other questions about that? I think you saw most of the important stuff. Actually, wait, no, you're the one who made that clip. Hold on. Or no, that was Wumper. Never mind. I don't know why I mixed you two up. I showed the clip. I'll show it again while I read my Discord. So here's just some last second context for what I've been demonstrating this whole time, is how you survive this scenario. And I still have it open. I wish Wumper was here. Let me get this back open again. So yeah, just one last time before we move on from the spike fall thing. I'll look at the questions or whatever has been sent to me in Discord. So again, video sharing, full screen. You could survive this fall. This is a real run that someone had where they fell into spikes and just survived it like that. And I basically have been spending the last hour reproducing this scenario. He fell 13 tiles. He whipped on a specific coyote frame. And that gave him the exact lineup to survive a fall into the spikes and just take fall damage instead. So, clips of this stuff exist. They show up every now and then in like the bug channel or on Reddit, and now everybody here knows why it happens. It's frame perfect, and it's only possible in certain circumstances. So good luck. Have fun with that. I'm gonna go check my DMs now to see what people are sending me. So what do we got here? This one is from And when did this get sent to me? Ages ago. Is this... ML, are you still here? Is this... I don't actually know what this is for. I didn't even notice you sent this to me like 3 hours ago. I'll just open it real quick. Let's see. Okay, what are you doing here? I'll show it in chat if it's something I'm gonna... Oh my god. Oh no. Okay, it's just a sad clip. No, whatever. Let's just show it anyways. I laugh at people's misfortune. Here's what was sent to me. I don't know what the context was for this, but here it is, chat. Just kind of like through the spark trap, which I... No idea what's going on there. And then this. You hate to see it. This makes me feel slightly better about how shitty my CO runs were today. Now, what's the other thing that was sent to me? Let's have a look at that. Alright, Medial has sent me... how am I going to share this? You hold and drag the process bar, you can go frame by frame. Oh, I didn't even know you could do that with these. I don't want to show my Discord if I can avoid it. Let's see if I can get a link to this. That might actually work. Copy link. Here we go. Let's try this. Ah, it wants to download it. Oh my god, why can't this be easy? Let's see, what are you showing here? Maybe chat doesn't need to see this part. You hold in... I'm uncertain what you're trying to show me here. Is this just like more heavy state stuff? Yeah, you jump and... I wonder if it has to do with when you stomp the enemy. Maybe jumping and whipping and then getting the stomp also puts you in heavy state. I'm not sure. I need to do more homework on heavy state to understand it, so I don't know if I'm in a good position to demonstrate more of that. But that is something I think I need to look into at some point here, is try to understand how it works properly. And maybe there will be a future science stream where I actually demonstrate that. But good to have that, though. It is clearly possible to do it that way. I'm just not entirely sure how it works. The way I was able to get it to happen was just to reproduce it by doing it on the same frame. Yeah, you don't input on the same frame. Could someone explain what I'm doing? I am digging into like frame perfect nitty gritty nonsense in this video game to show that you can fall into spikes and not die if you just happen to do it perfectly. Are there any magic numbers you can line up? There's only one that I know about. Let's go ahead and show it again. This is the Wumper clip. So there's only one that I'm aware of right now. It is 13 tiles with a whip on a specific coyote frame, which could theoretically be done in a real run. So I think that's this height right here. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, that's 13. Put the black market. Nope, scam door. Anyways, that's a 13 right here. So if I fall off of this and do it just right, then I will be able to get a reproducible lineup. There are probably other ones that I do not know about, but this is what this one looks like. So let me frame advance. So you walk off the edge. And then on this frame right here, this is the one where you want to whip. This is like the first, like, I think this is like Coyote Frame 3 or something. I think that this happens on. I guess I could check. We don't have to just wing it. Show the test window again and pick the player. So we're on Coyote Timer 4. We press whip on this frame. It decrements to 3. And this just barely affects your velocity in such a way that you could fall into the spikes. And fall damage. And that's what was in the clip that I showed a little bit earlier. So like that's the only lineup that I know about, is a whip on that frame. If you do it one frame earlier or one frame later, it doesn't work. It has to be that specific frame. 13 tiles, whip on like the whip when the game decrements to Coyote Timer 3. If that doesn't make a lot of sense from a gameplay standpoint. You can't see any of these numbers, but it is theoretically possible to do it. It's just very, very difficult. Like, I could probably do it if I tried it several times here, but I'm going to die several more times here. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to give it one shot and see if I'm enough of a gamer to actually get it. I actually I did it. I just didn't have enough health to survive the fall. I actually did it. I first tried it. I just didn't survive the fall because I had 1 health. But I didn't land on the spikes. You can see there's no blood on these ones, and these are the ones I landed on. Well, there you go. First try. Let's go. Just didn't have the health to survive it. But it's technically doable in a real run context. Just very difficult. So what's the lowest height without a rope? I mean, the exact number is... I think it's this. Was this the one? Hold on, let me check. I can just get you the exact number. At least the shortest one that I know about is this far above the top of the spikes. Okay, so whatever this means to you, you need to fall from this far from the top of the spikes is the magic number. Your character's origin point needs to be that far above the top of the spikes. Yeah, to show what that actually like converts to visually, let me turn God mode back on and just position myself accordingly. Why do I only get jungle levels with no spikes when I'm trying to show this off? This literally never happens in actual runs. And yet here we are, jungle after jungle. There we go, there's some spikes. Alright, so what that would amount to for this particular spike pit is 92.1 plus this. Let's lock our camera and then set our position to that value right there. So 99.88 and 28. Warp to start position. I need to not be on the rope. See if I can get a slightly better camera angle. There we go. All right, so this is what that looks like here. I want to see with the grid. And I believe this is survivable. So let's see if we got this right. If I didn't get this right, then we'll find out in a moment. Yeah, this is the survivable one that doesn't deal any fall damage. This is the lowest I'm aware of that you can do this and have it still work. So right there. And it's pretty much just a tidbit underneath 8 tiles is what that boils down to. So if we remove these so you can see it a little more easily. This is the position that you would have to be at when you started accelerating downwards. And I believe I set this up to reset my coyote frames. Is that window still open? Yeah, there it is. Let me pick play real quick and see if I can spot that. Yeah, I reset the coyote timer when I did that. So essentially, if you were on the ground and then the floor underneath you disappeared at this exact height, you'd be able to do this. The reality is I think you would only be able to get a lineup like this by like detaching from a rope or something. And there may be a whip setup that allows you to get lower, because I showed earlier that you could walk off an 8-tile ledge if you whip on the correct frame and survive the fall without taking any fall damage. The same kind of thing probably applies to the spikes here. But I don't know how exactly the lineups would work for that. Maybe you have to like detach from a rope or something. There may just not be like a floor lineup that allows you to do it at all. It's a lot of brute forcing that I don't care to dig into really. Maybe at some point we'll discover new ones, or if anyone has clips of this happening, we could definitely figure it out. But I don't know anymore off the top of my head. How does my calculation work? Which one? You have any idea how little that narrows it down? If you want to understand how anything here works, I'm more than happy to explain it. I think we're mostly done with the spike drop segment. So now's the time for questions, chat. Or if you have any other questions about this video game, go ahead and shoot. I could probably do this for like another hour before I end stream, I think. On one of my console, this is just me basically brute forcing this. Like this was through trial and error. What this is boiling down to is, this is the height of the player. It's a little hard to see the highlights here. This is like the distance between the bottom of the player's hitbox and their origin point. 92.1 is the top of the spikes. 8 is just a rough approximation I used that figured out like basically how far I needed to fall to be falling fast enough. And then this here is like the adjustment that I kept making as I tried to get myself just right down to the exact value that I needed for the overlap with the spikes. So like the last one is the one that I messed with, like just one number at a time to find certain values. Other values I found with the binary search, like for instance that arbitrary threshold I mentioned earlier, where you can overlap a spike tile by exactly 0.212 something tiles and not get stabbed by the spikes. And then on the next frame you can touch the floor and thus not get stabbed by the spikes. Like I found that one with binary search, but I found this one by just kind of brute forcing it. And this was the easiest way to do this, was to just store the numbers like this instead of mess with like a really arbitrary number that didn't make any sense to me. So really this is the only thing I modify when I looked for like new lineups. And again, unfortunately, I did not find lineups that like work well off of the floor like this, but there might be a few that I just failed to find for one reason or another. Any other questions about that? So 0.77 miles above another heights. Yeah, it's kind of a magic number. It's essentially just me getting myself in a position where if I were to fall from that height, I'm going to hit the spikes with the correct falling timer and velocity to survive the fall and not take fall damage. There's not really a list. Like, this is kind of the only one. I mean, do you want me to like give you specific numbers? Are you gonna like dig into this more or something? Like I can try to give you values that are useful, but again, I only have like a couple of these lineups, like the one I showed for the rope and then this one here. And then besides that, you can extrapolate what the other ones are based on like the physics of the player falling. The fact that acceleration in this game is 0.01 units per frame, and then the max falling speed is 0.4 units per frame. And like with those two things together, you can extrapolate what the other numbers are. So like if I'm falling at max speed, I can move myself up 0.4 units and I'll still survive that. You want all survivable Y values. I mean, you've got the one here. I'm not sure how to like formulate this data for you. The other thing to consider that makes this like not as useful as you'd like it to be is the fact that walking off of a ledge versus, or dropping off a ledge versus walking off a floor versus getting off a vine gives you different falling behavior due to the weird way the acceleration works. So, I'm trying to think what I could give you here that would be helpful, but really the best I could do is give you an equation for like how you have to survive it and then let you extrapolate them from that. You get different acceleration for different reasons. We're going to, okay, a little bit of overlap back with what we were doing earlier, but let me get player one back out here. It has to do with the coyote frames again. Like they mess with a lot of stuff. So if we pull this bad boy out again, this one right here. So coyote timer affects this stuff because it changes how you accelerate downwards. If you just walk off an edge, you get one frame of downward velocity, and then until your coyote frames end, you keep that velocity. So I've advanced a few frames, and then when your coyote timer ends, you start accelerating downward. And that kind of like stalling on your Y velocity will affect your lineup in the spikes. So for instance, this one would be lethal, and odds are, no matter how I do this, it would still be lethal. But if I run off the edge while whipping, for instance, I'm accelerating immediately, even though I have coyote frames, because you need to be in the falling state to get the 0G effect from coyote frames. I could still jump out of this coyote timer, but it's not going to slow me down. So I'm going to hit the spikes differently, which is also lethal. And I don't know which lineups would allow that to not be lethal. That's why I don't really have any like useful information for you. The thing to do to figure this out would be to kind of brute force like various setups for when you like whip as you're walking off the edge. So for instance, if I like whipped on, let's say this frame, let's see how that affects it. No, we're gonna die on that frame. I think I have God mode on. Yeah, I do have God mode on. But if I whip on a later frame, maybe this one will be survivable. What about this frame? What we did here was we locked our velocity for a second here before it started falling again. This was how Wumper had that one lineup that was survivable at 13 tiles. The only one that I know about so far was whipping on that frame from 13 tiles up. But as you can see, it doesn't work from here. Maybe it works from 11 tiles. Let's try that. So let me get the camera back up. Camera, please. No, not that. The player. There we go. That's the stuff. So let's try 11 tiles. Maybe there's another lineup. So 9, 11 would be right here. So let's try the Wumper setup. So frame advance, walk off the edge. Whip on, input the whip on this frame. It'll get registered on Coyote frame 3. Let's see what this gives us. What's the prediction think is going to happen? And survival. Alright, so you can do it from... Let me turn off God mode to confirm. Yeah, survival. So there you go, that's actually another one. So you can do it from 13 or 11 tiles, and it's because since you're falling at the speed of 0.4 tiles per frame, and you fall 2 tiles, that essentially just rounds itself back off. So you have, after 5 frames, you fall in 2 tiles, and you have the same exact lineup that you did for 13. So presumably 17, 15, 13, that'll all work until you reach the 2 fall damage threshold, at which point you'll bounce too high, and then you'll die. So I think 15 would be the maximum that you could do that from. So let me turn God mode back on. Like this Wumper, not Wumper, Googlebo, this is the information that I feel like would be more useful than like just a bunch of numbers, is like that kind of concept behind it. But like there's more work I would need to do to figure out all the lineups. But the situation that Wumper had, for instance, was 13 tiles. So we have 8, we know 11 survival, 13, what about 15? Let's see if we can do that. So with God mode turned on, let's try 15 tiles. We're gonna whip on that 1 frame. So whip on this frame and fall, and let's see if we take 2 fall damage. Nope, so that would have been survivable. I have God mode on, so I will take the spike hit when I touch the ground, but if I did not have God mode on, I would have taken 1 fall damage and I would have survived the spikes, is what would have happened there. I don't know why the God mode does that, but I think the way they programmed it is it cancels out the impact from the fall, but it doesn't clear your falling state on that frame, so the spikes think you're still falling, and you're protruding deeply into the spikes, and so that ends up killing you. Anyways, Mongo, hello, thank you for the raid. Right in the middle of science. How was your stream? What were you up to? Let me give you a shout out. I think all my mods are asleep now. Maybe they're not. I don't know. Let's find out. In Sketch, thank you for the follow. Streaming art. Ooh, what are you drawing? What have you been up to? Anyways, welcome everyone. We're doing Spelunky science. It's fall damage science. Surviving falling into spike science. Oh hey Jess, that's where you went. Love my profile pic. Yep, Jess drew it. And I think I'm going to change the beak to be gray. I was talking to Jess about that. Oh, you've always been here. Well, you're a raider, so I mean, I think you were dual viewing. You were cheating on me is what you were doing. But yeah, I'm probably going to change the beak to be gray at some point. We're just going to embrace the character being a crow. But yeah, I love it. I love how Jess drew it. It's based on Dexter from Dexter's Lab, an old like 90s cartoon on Cartoon Network for anyone who doesn't know what it's from. So it is based on something. Yeah, don't worry about it, Jess. I do that all the time. But anyways, we can survive falling into the spikes from 15 tiles if we whip on that particular frame. You're going to change it for me? Alright, if you want to. I'm going to come clean. I'm not going to pay for that change, though. That's something I could do myself. But if you want to, then go ahead and do it. I will get to it at some point, I promise. I miss Dexter's Lab. I miss Cartoon Network. I miss cable. Back when cable wasn't just the cesspool that it is now. Don't expect me to pay for that. Okay, I appreciate that. Shopkeeper, could you chill out, please? You've been making noise over here this whole time while we're just doing some nice science. So anyways, that's 15, 13, 11. Let's see if we could survive a 9-tile fall. I think this is the lowest that I can get with this particular setup. So again, walk off the edge. Whip on this frame. And that is going to, the whip is going to be processed on Coyote Timer 3 is what's going to happen here. So I press whip. And then the next frame, the game sees my whip, Coyote Timer decrements to 3, and that just tweaks my velocity in just the right way. And let's see if we survive that fall. And we survive it. On the next frame, again, I have God mode on, so you're going to hear the sound, but if I did not have God mode on, I would have survived that fall. Why is the ghost here? Did I unset this, or did they change the settings? This isn't game cheats. Get rid of that crap. Alright, I'll delete the ghost when it comes over here. But then this one here, I think, is this the... Yeah, this is the 7, so I suspect we're not going to survive the 7-tile fall because we're not going to be moving fast enough, is my theory. So let's try the 7. So again, airborne, input whip on this frame. There's a lot going on here on the right, but if we pay attention to my velocity, I am not falling fast enough to survive the spikes, and the game is predicting that I'm going to die on the next one. This is going to protrude too much into the spikes, and we're not falling fast enough. So, there's your lineups. Kukubo, if you wanted some lineups, you input whip such that it is seen on Coyote Frame 3, and you can do it from 9, 11, 13, and 15 tiles. And then I've God mode on, so that's not going to kill me, but that right there would have been death to the spikes. That's what it looks like if I actually die to the spikes instead of falling through them with God mode. And then we just sink into them and die miserably. But that's really all the info I have for setups for this. Like, again, the numbers that I showed off earlier were just a couple that I wrote down. And that's really all I know about, like, setups for falling into spikes and surviving. Curious if there's any. I don't know if there are any. I did not encounter any during my testing. It would be difficult, though not impossible, to brute force that. There's another thing that can be tested, which is whip and then run off of the edge, which is easy to do. So if I, for instance, do this, just whip early and then run off. And this is, you don't have to do a setup for this because it's not frame perfect at all. I start decelerating or accelerating downwards, whatever the term would be for that, immediately. And it's possible if there's a setup like this that would allow you to do it as well. So that's something to consider, is running off an edge while whipping and not having like a precise timing for that. And as it stands, this one looks like it was actually really close to surviving. We almost make it deeply enough into the spikes, but just not quite. It doesn't make it. We don't protrude deeply enough on the first frame, and then on the next frame we die. So as you can see here, I'm just barely not going to make it to the floor of the spikes, so I will take the fall. But you can see how insanely close that was. That actually, I think the floating point precision is the reason that didn't work. So it's possible that that setup would work in a different like position. That was 9 tiles whipping and running off of the edge was what we did there to produce that one. So who knows, maybe I can actually find one right now. Maybe it's just, maybe this setup is safe. So if I whip and then run off the edge here, we whipped for the entire duration of the Coyote frame mumbo jumbo. Let's see what happens here. Now, if we still die, just barely. It's extremely close to working, so maybe in a different part of the level, this would round off differently and you would actually survive this fall. So there's some hope for that. Like, ideally, you would want to be in the, like, point... You want to be between, like, 0.2 and 0.21 is really what you're aiming for when you're doing this. But I don't know any non-frame perfect setups that cause that. Mentioned it's possible to take it from a 7-tile drop. So if you combine that with spikes, does that save you? I don't think I showed the 7-tile fall damage scenario. Did I? No, I think I did show that. I don't remember. But would that save you? Probably not, simply because I don't think the alignment would be good, but we can try it. We have a 7-tile fall right here. So let's see, the 7-tile lineup would basically be you want to squander your Coyote frames, is what you're trying to do to get that to happen. And I think that actually is just whipping and running off the edge. Because the falling timer starts incrementing immediately, and you start falling quickly. And then you don't get the reset from the Coyote timer. There's probably a few ways that you can do this. Yeah, I didn't show it. Well, either way, that's lethal, so that's not going to teach us a whole lot. That lineup's not even close. So I guess I can try to show that off real quick. Let's just do it like right over here in the same level so I don't have to lose the spikes. So let's see if I can reproduce the walk off a 7-tile ledge and take fall damage scenario that I think exists, but I'm not 100% sure. So we want the worst case scenario. The best case scenario, for a little bit of context here, was the 8-tile scenario. And just as a setup that I learned, it's a 2-frame trick, and if you whip 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 frames and then run off the edge from this particular lineup, it's going to be different depending on what your lineup is. I can start running off the edge while I'm in the attacking state. Let me actually get this on top so you can see my Coyote timer as well. So Coyote timer and falling timer and attacking state are the things to look at. It's a little bit of a mess, but I don't have a better way to display this. So we're still attacking. The game has just realized that we're falling. It starts decrementing our Coyote timer, but since we're in the attacking state and not the whipping state, we don't have anti-gravity, which means we're accelerating downwards. And that's the secret to this working. So we're still gaining speed, but we still have coyote frames. We just finished whipping. We're in the falling state, which means the game is going to detect that, and as you can see on that frame, it reset our falling timer back to 0. And that's what allows you to take this 8 tile like drop without taking fall damage, is the fact that we gained some distance and velocity, and then we got a free reset from the coyote timer. Whereas normally if you walked off this edge, you would be a little bit higher up with a little less velocity, and you would not hit the ground fast enough to not accumulate fall damage. So you can see the falling timer here. We just land. Nothing happens. And yes, I had God mode on. That doesn't affect it. The question is, what is the worst case scenario? How can you do this from 7 tiles and get yourself to take fall damage? And I don't know off the top of my head, so let's try to think this exercise through a little bit. We want to avoid the coyote timer reset, but we also want to have as little falling speed as possible. We want to stall in the air as long as we can without resetting our falling timer. And we know that being in the whipping state prevents the falling timer from resetting. So what I'm thinking that we want to do, first of all, let's see if it's even possible. So let me think about this. I think you need to whip late. So let's run off the edge. I think you want to whip late is what you need to do here. So we're in that state. The game is going to detect that we're falling on this frame. What if I whip on this frame? Let's see what happens. That should prevent the coyote timer from resetting it. No, it still reset it. So let's try whipping 1 frame earlier than that. So reset our whip. So let's whip on this frame right here and see what happens. So I start whipping. I'm accelerating at 0.1. Not sure if that's going to work, but we did lose our coyote frame, so we started falling early. Ooh, that's close. That's 1 frame away from taking the damage. I wonder if there's a way that I could get this to just go a little bit longer. Let's see, what can I do here? We're just running off edge. Obviously, if you were to jump at all while doing this, it would definitely cause the problem. So let's see, if we do this... So if I whip on this frame, I think that's what I just did. We started, the problem is we're decelerating. I wonder if there's any way to do this. And then that's not going to be fall damage. I can turn off God mode, actually, just to make sure we don't miss a fall damage tick if it happens. Let's try whipping 1 frame later. So, let's try this frame. Incidentally, this is the frame that allowed Wumper to survive that spike fall. But surviving the spike fall wasn't about changing like the speed at which I hit the ground, it was about changing my vertical alignment with the spikes. Like he was falling at maximum speed when he hit the spikes. Not sure. I might have been mistaken. I could have sworn that I read somewhere, like on the science channel on Discord, that it was possible to time your whip in such a way that you would actually take fall damage walking off a 7-tile ledge, but I could be mistaken. I'm not going to pretend that I know off the top of my head all of this science. I might have to go looking into that again to see if I can get it to happen. But it looks like that's not going to be the case, at least not with the approach that I'm using for this. I'm trying to think if there's any other whip timings that I have not utilized here. The only thing I could think of would be... What if my whip ended early in the fall? Yeah, this might not be possible to do. Let's see. So what's going to happen here, actually? So we're going to start falling. Wait, did I have 0 coyote frames? Is that what goes into it? Or did I run out as I was running off the edge? No, it was decrementing normally. I just wasn't looking at the timer. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe if the whip ends on the last coyote frame. You think so? Let's see. Well, no, that's how we do the 8-tile one. Right? Like, the magic of the 8-tile one is that we get 1 coyote frame where we're not in the whipping state, and what that allows you to do is reset your falling timer on the last possible frame while you've already gained a bunch of downward speed. Now, are you saying like maybe 1 frame later than that? I'm not sure if that would do anything. So let's see here. We know that 10 frames from this setup would do that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then start running forward. Alright, we just switched to the falling state. Or actually, no, 7 frames would have been the one that does it. But I guess we'll just play this one out and see what happens. So we just switched to the falling state. And I don't think anything interesting is going to happen here. Yeah, we hit the ground with a very good margin. So let's try 7 frames of whipping. I'm not going to brute force this for too much longer, because it's probably not going to be very fruitful. I think I might need to go fact check myself on whether or not it's possible to take 7 tile fall damage. There could be more to it that I'm not understanding. I'll have to go do some research again. Anyways, let's try 7 frames. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And run off the edge. This is going to end our whip a little early. And let's see what that winds up with. Alright, we just switched to the falling state. And we did not get the reset on the coyote timer. So we still have a maximum falling timer here. And that's still just not enough to take fall damage. Like, it's 1 frame off from taking fall damage. And even then, it's very close to doing it, but just not quite. So I can't force it to happen from here. But that same setup, one with like 1 less or 1 additional frame of whipping before running off the edge, allows you to get a reset from your coyote timer and survive the 8 tile fall without taking fall damage. It's just frame perfect. Or it's 2 frame perfect, so not well, actually let me give myself another onk. So I could probably reproduce this if I just try this a few times, like just in real time. So let me turn off God mode real quick and just see if I can get this to happen. So what we want to do here is whip and then run off the edge when we think it's pretty close to ending. So let me see what 10 frames of whipping looks like, or I guess 8 or 9 is what I'm aiming for. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Alright, so if we're not moving by the time the front whip comes out, then I'm too late. So let's see if I can reproduce this. Nope, that's fall damage. We'll do this a few times. I'm not going to waste everyone's time with it. I'm just curious if I could do this in real time. Nope, still fall damage. It's unfortunately, I'm not going to really know if it worked until I scuff it. That's a ledge hang. That doesn't count. As you know, the Spelunker's arms are indestructible. That was too early, I think. I'm kind of disappointed in myself. I got that frame 1 trick first try, and now I can't do this. That was too late, I think. There we go. Okay. So it's doable. You just saw it right there. No God mode. It took me, like, I think 8 tries or something to get it, but, like, it's theoretically something that you could do, and it's definitely something a task could do. Should somebody, like, take up that endeavor for this fine video game. But right there, that was it. That was the 8 tiles. It's quite possible that you've done this like in a run by accident at some point. Like anybody who has just played this enough and was like trying to whip a spider or a bat, you might have done this accidentally at some point and then like thought to yourself like, wow, why didn't I take fall damage? And this is quite likely the reason why you didn't take fall damage, is you whipped within the 2 frame window, which is a 30th of a second. So it's not quite as bad as some of the other tricks. It is 2 frames, but it's still difficult. There's not really any setups for it. You just need to make sure that your whip is at a very specific time as you walk off the edge to not take the fall damage. Which I had God mode on. That was fall damage. I didn't get it during that one. Okay, any other thoughts or questions about the spike things? Hey, Cloyce. It's always the painful thing if people show up late and I feel like I just need to like show everything again, but like I have to cut it off at some point here. Like there'll be a VOD of this stuff. Like I've been saving VODs to my Twitch channel. I might at some point move them to YouTube if I ever get around to making a YouTube channel. I've said this before, I don't plan on doing any edited YouTube videos. I'm not going to say never, but that's not anything in like the near future that I plan to do, because editing is just way too time consuming and I just don't want to do it. And YouTube is a thankless like hellhole of just like bots and algorithms and problems. But I may at some point download my VODs off of Twitch and put them on YouTube for anybody who hates the Twitch player, which I mean, you rightly should, but it's better than it used to be. They're watchable. Meanwhile, they're all on my channel. There's a collection I think I made for science-related stuff, and I've been putting all of the VODs on that. So this information is there. Is it possible if you get knocked off a rope? I would assume so. You just need to be at the correct alignment. Like, really, you just need to be falling at the correct speed and happen to have the right offset. In the case of something like a rope, it's not difficult to get that offset. But it's difficult, but it's very much possible. You just have to get lucky and be in the right spot. Get hit stunned by the enemy, which would... I didn't mean to do that. I accidentally pressed a reset level keybind. You'd have to get hit stunned by the enemy at just the correct height and just fall into the spikes. Like, the enemy doesn't, I think, contribute anything to this. As far as I'm aware, iframes don't do anything for, like, falling into spikes. You just die in the spikes anyways. So the only thing that I know of that affects it is just your speed and then, like, your alignment as you pass into the spikes. Leave this open. Alright, I turned off God mode. This is what I meant to do. I pressed Control G to turn off the grid. That's God mode. Control Shift G is the grid. Now we have it back on. Thank you, Ankh. Very cool. But yeah, that's basically all I know about the spike fall. That's what I wanted to show off here mostly.